What if one impulsive moment could shatter everything you thought was perfect? A sprawling estate, a seemingly ideal family, a dark secret. When 15-year-old Jason makes a shocking decision involving his baby sister, only a loyal German shepherd stands between the Blackwells and tragedy. As corruption, blackmail, and buried truths emerge, discover who will survive when the facade finally crumbles. Subscribe now and comment where you're watching from. Martha never imagined that during that sweltering August in the Connecticut countryside, her peaceful life on the Blackwell family estate would take such a dramatic turn. The sprawling property, with its manicured gardens and ornamental ponds, seemed the perfect sanctuary to raise her newborn daughter, Emma. The colonial-style mansion, with its white columns and wraparound porch, had stood for generations as a symbol of old money and stability. Martha was in her mid-30s, with chestnut hair that fell in soft waves around her heart-shaped face. Her green eyes, once bright with ambition during her days as a corporate attorney, now softened when they gazed upon her baby daughter. She'd traded her tailored suits for comfortable linen dresses that flowed around her postpartum body as she moved through the estate's many rooms. The only tension in that idyllic world was Jason, her 15-year-old stepson, who had grown increasingly rebellious and resentful since Emma's arrival. Tall and lanky with his father's sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes, Jason wore his adolescent anger like armor, his shoulders perpetually hunched forward as if bracing for impact. "She's not even your real daughter," Jason muttered one morning at breakfast, stabbing at his scrambled eggs while glaring at Martha across the kitchen island. "Dad only married you because you got pregnant." Martha set down her coffee mug, the porcelain making a soft clink against the marble countertop. "Jason," she said, her voice steady despite the sting of his words, "I know this transition hasn't been easy for you, but Emma is your sister, and I'm not trying to replace your mom." "Whatever," Jason scoffed, pushing away from the table. "You've been here 2 years, and suddenly you're redecorating the house, changing all the rules. Dad doesn't even argue with you anymore." Martha watched as he stormed out, screen door slamming behind him. Duke, the family's German shepherd, raised his head from his spot near the fireplace, dark eyes following Jason before turning to Martha with a soft whine. "I know, boy," she whispered, reaching down to scratch behind his ears. "He's hurting." It all began one sticky August afternoon when Jason, who had just lost his driving privileges after sneaking out to a party, carried little Emma toward the back of the property. Duke padded silently behind them, his tail low, sensing the tension radiating from the teenager. Martha noticed them from the upstairs window where she'd been folding laundry. Something about Jason's posture, rigid, determined, sent a chill through her despite the summer heat. She watched as he headed toward the decorative pond where the family kept several exotic koi and a small alligator gar, a prehistoric-looking fish that Richard, her husband, had proudly introduced to the ecosystem years ago. "Jason," she called, dropping the towel she'd been folding. But the window was closed, the air conditioning humming, and her voice didn't carry across the expansive lawn. What Martha didn't know was that Walter, the estate's elderly groundskeeper who had served the Blackwell family for over 40 years, had been documenting the family's private moments for months. His weathered hands, spotted with age and steady from decades of precise garden work, held a small camera hidden among the hedges he pretended to trim. The revelation that Meredith, the housekeeper whom Martha considered her closest ally in this new life, had been gathering evidence for blackmail would soon shatter the fragile peace of the Blackwell estate forever. In the most secluded corner of the grounds, Jason approached the ornamental pond, Emma cradled against his chest. Her tiny fingers grabbed at his t-shirt as she gurgled, completely unaware of the turmoil raging inside her half-brother. The pond's surface rippled as the prehistoric-looking alligator gar glided beneath, its armored scales catching the afternoon sunlight. "You don't even cry when I hold you," Jason whispered, his voice cracking. "You don't know what you've done to this family." He looked down at Emma's face, those eyes, so much like his father's, staring back at him with innocent curiosity. For a split second, a dark thought crossed his mind as he held the baby closer to the water's edge. Duke, sensing danger, suddenly lunged forward with a ferocious bark that shattered the quiet. The dog's powerful body planted itself between Jason and the pond, teeth bared in an uncharacteristic display of aggression toward the boy he'd watched grow up. "Get out of the way, Duke," Jason shouted, but the shepherd wouldn't budge, his deep bark now echoing across the property. Walter, concealed behind a cluster of hydrangeas, steadied his camera with trembling hands. The lens captured every moment. Jason's tear-streaked face, the baby in his arms, the protective stance of the German shepherd. He'd started documenting the family months ago when he'd overheard a suspicious conversation between Meredith and someone on the phone. What had begun as concern for the family he'd served loyally was now becoming something else entirely. "Jason," Martha's voice cut through the tension as she raced across the lawn, her bare feet barely registering the sharp gravel of the garden path. "What are you doing?" Her heart hammered against her ribs, adrenaline clearing her mind with terrifying clarity. Jason turned, shame and anger warring on his face. "I wasn't going to. I just wanted to show her the fish." But the tears streaming down his cheeks told a different story. Martha slowed her approach, hands outstretched. "Give her to me, please," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the fear threatening to choke her. "Let's talk about whatever's going on." "There's nothing to talk about," Jason said, but he allowed Martha to take Emma from his arms. The baby instantly nuzzled against her mother's neck, sensing the tension in the air. "There is," Martha insisted, reaching out to touch Jason's arm. He flinched but didn't pull away. "I know you're hurting. I know you miss how things were before. You don't know anything about me," Jason spat, but the venom in his words was diluted by the crack in his voice. "Then help me understand," Martha pleaded. Behind them, Walter slipped away, camera clutched to his chest. The images he'd captured would become pivotal evidence in the drama about to unfold. Richard Blackwell, at 52, carried himself with the confident posture of a man accustomed to control. His salt and pepper hair was always immaculately styled, his custom suits tailored to hide the slight softness developing around his middle. As CEO of Blackwell Investments, he had built a reputation as a shrewd businessman with political connections that stretched from Connecticut to Washington, D.C. That evening, as Richard's Audi pulled into the circular driveway, Martha stood waiting on the porch, Emma asleep in her arms. "We need to talk," she said before he could even loosen his tie. "Something happened with Jason today." Richard's piercing blue eyes, the same ones he'd passed to his son, narrowed slightly. "What did he do now?" Martha hesitated, unwilling to voice her darkest suspicions. "He took Emma down to the pond. Duke stopped him from, I don't know what." She couldn't bring herself to finish the thought. Richard pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture Martha had come to recognize as his way of containing frustration. "Where is he now?" "In his room. He won't talk to me." "I'll handle it," Richard said, brushing past her into the house, leaving Martha standing alone as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Meredith Kelly moved through the Blackwell mansion with practiced efficiency, her uniform crisp despite the August humidity. At 58, her face bore the lines of a woman who had seen much but revealed little. For 7 years, she had served as the estate's head housekeeper, privy to the family's most intimate moments. "Mr. Blackwell is with Jason now," she informed Martha, who paced the kitchen with Emma on her hip. "Would you like me to take the baby for her bath?" Martha shook her head. "I'd rather keep her with me tonight." She studied Meredith's impassive face, searching for any hint of judgment. "Do you think I'm overreacting about what happened today?" Meredith's expression softened slightly. "It's not my place to say, Mrs. Blackwell." "Please, Meredith. You've been here longer than I have. You know this family." The older woman hesitated, then sighed. "Boys Jason's age are full of conflicting emotions. But that dog," she paused. "Duke has always had good instincts." Upstairs, Richard closed Jason's bedroom door behind him. The teenager sat on his bed, headphones around his neck, his posture defensive. "Your stepmother told me what happened," Richard began, loosening his tie as he settled into the desk chair opposite his son. "She thinks I was going to hurt Emma," Jason said, his voice hollow. "I wasn't. I swear." Richard studied his son's face. "Then what were you doing?" "I don't know." Jason exploded, jumping to his feet. "Everything was fine before she came. Before both of them came. You were actually around, Dad. We did things together. Now it's all about the baby, and your precious new wife, and this perfect freaking family you're trying to build." Richard's jaw tightened. "Lower your voice." "Or what? You'll ground me again? Take away more privileges?" "Go ahead." Jason's hands were trembling. "You don't get it. Nothing matters anymore." "That's enough," Richard said, his tone dangerously quiet. I understand you're having a hard time adjusting. Adjusting? Jason laughed bitterly. Mom's been gone 3 years, and suddenly you bring home some lawyer who's young enough to be your daughter, get her pregnant, and expect me to play happy family? While you're barely even here anymore. A flash of guilt crossed Richard's face before he masked it with stern authority. I'm working to provide for this family. For your future. No, you're hiding, Jason said, surprising his father with his perceptiveness. Something's going on with you, Dad. I'm not stupid. Richard stood abruptly. We'll continue this conversation when you're calmer. In the meantime, your driving privileges are suspended indefinitely, and you'll start seeing Dr. Harris again next week. The shrink? Dad, come on. This isn't negotiable, Jason. As Richard closed the door behind him, he didn't notice Walter watching from the shadows of the hallway, nor did he see Meredith slip silently back downstairs after lingering just within earshot of the heated conversation. The next morning, Richard left earlier than usual, his breakfast untouched. Lisa, his executive assistant for over a decade, noticed his distraction when he arrived at the downtown office of Blackwell Investments. Senator Collins called again. She informed him, following him into his corner office with its sweeping views of the city skyline. He said it's urgent regarding the Westport development. Richard's shoulders tensed visibly. Tell him I'll call back this afternoon. And Lisa? He turned to face her. I need you to pull the Cayman accounts, the private ones. Bring them directly to me, no digital copies. Lisa's perfectly sculpted eyebrows lifted slightly, but she simply nodded. Of course. After she left, Richard closed his office door and leaned heavily against it. The carefully constructed walls between his personal and professional lives were beginning to crumble, and the fallout would be catastrophic if certain connections came to light. He hadn't anticipated Jason's perceptiveness, nor Martha's growing suspicions about his long hours. The pressure of maintaining appearances was becoming unbearable. His phone buzzed with a text from Martha. Jason agreed to therapy. Starting tomorrow. We need to talk tonight. Richard stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the reply button. Finally, he typed, working late. Don't wait up. During one of Jason's required visits to his father's office that Friday afternoon, the troubled teenager slouched in the reception area, scrolling mindlessly through his phone. Lisa, Richard's assistant, cast occasional sympathetic glances his way while typing furiously at her computer. You can go in now, she finally said. Your dad had to step out for a quick meeting, but he said you can wait in his office. Jason shrugged and shuffled past her desk, pushing open the heavy oak door to his father's corner office. The space was impeccably organized, leather-bound folders arranged by color, a large mahogany desk positioned to showcase the impressive city view. It was a room designed to intimidate, to project power and control. Bored and restless, Jason began rifling through the desk drawers. In the bottom one, beneath a stack of manila folders, he discovered a flash drive labeled simply, SC Project. Curiosity piqued, he plugged it into his father's computer. What loaded onto the screen made Jason's blood run cold. Spreadsheets detailing millions in transactions to offshore accounts. Emails between his father and several state senators discussing compensation for favorable votes on zoning changes. Photos of handshakes with men whose faces Jason recognized from news reports. Not just politicians, but figures rumored to have connections to organized crime. What the hell are you doing? Richard's voice cut through the room like a whip. Jason jumped, nearly knocking over the leather chair. Dad, get away from my computer, Richard growled, striding across the room. His normally composed face was contorted with rage and fear. What is all this? Jason gestured toward the screen. Are you bribing people? Is that how we can afford everything? Richard yanked the flash drive from the computer. You have no idea what you're looking at. This is business, Jason. Adult business that doesn't concern you. Doesn't concern me? Jason's voice cracked. Those are senators, Dad. That guy, he pointed to one of the photos. He was investigated for racketeering last year. Richard gripped Jason's arm tightly. Listen to me very carefully. What you saw stays in this room. Do you understand? People's lives depend on it. Our family's safety depends on it. The teenager pulled away, eyes wide with disbelief. Our safety? Or your reputation? Does Martha know? A muscle twitched in Richard's jaw. Your stepmother is not to hear a word about this. She knows I have powerful business connections. That's all she needs to know. So she's in the dark too. Jason said slowly. Perfect Martha with her perfect baby doesn't know she married a criminal. Watch your mouth, Richard snapped. The world isn't black and white, son. Sometimes maintaining our way of life requires flexibility with certain regulations. That's what we're calling it. Flexibility. Jason laughed humorlessly. No wonder you're never home anymore. The tension between them crackled like electricity. Finally, Richard's shoulders sagged slightly. I'm protecting this family. Everything I do, everything, is to secure your future, Jason. Someday you'll understand. I don't think I want to understand, Jason said quietly. And I don't think I want any part of it. As they drove home in silence, neither noticed the black sedan that followed them at a discreet distance, nor the man inside taking photographs of their departure from the office building. Back at the estate, Martha was finishing a private yoga session with Natasha, an elegant woman in her 40s with olive skin and a slight accent that hinted at Eastern European origins. Your form is improving, Natasha observed as Martha held a challenging pose. But your mind is elsewhere today. Martha released the pose with a sigh. Family drama. My stepson, there was an incident yesterday. Natasha rolled up her yoga mat with practiced precision. The teenage boy who resents his father's new family? A story as old as time. It's more than that, Martha said, lowering her voice despite the empty room. Sometimes I wonder if I really know my husband at all. He's been so distant lately, secretive about his work. Natasha's dark eyes studied Martha intently. Men like Richard Blackwell often carry burdens they refuse to share. In my experience, powerful men keep secrets that would shock those closest to them. That sounds like you speak from experience, Martha said, suddenly curious about her instructor's past. An enigmatic smile flickered across Natasha's face. Let's just say my previous career gave me unique insights into how power operates. Now, same time next week. During one of Jason's required visits to his father's office that Friday afternoon, the troubled teenager slouched in the reception area, scrolling mindlessly through his phone. Lisa, Richard's assistant, cast occasional sympathetic glances his way while typing furiously at her computer. You can go in now, she finally said. Your dad had to step out for a quick meeting, but he said you can wait in his office. Jason shrugged and shuffled past her desk, pushing open the heavy oak door to his father's corner office. The space was impeccably organized, leather-bound folders arranged by color, a large mahogany desk positioned to showcase the impressive city view. It was a room designed to intimidate, to project power and control. Bored and restless, Jason began rifling through the desk drawers. In the bottom one, beneath a stack of manila folders, he discovered a flash drive labeled simply, SC Project. Curiosity piqued, he plugged it into his father's computer. What loaded onto the screen made Jason's blood run cold. Spreadsheets detailing millions in transactions to offshore accounts. Emails between his father and several state senators discussing compensation for favorable votes on zoning changes. Photos of handshakes with men whose faces Jason recognized from news reports. Not just politicians, but figures rumored to have connections to organized crime. What the hell are you doing? Richard's voice cut through the room like a whip. Jason jumped, nearly knocking over the leather chair. Dad, get away from my computer, Richard growled, striding across the room. His normally composed face was contorted with rage and fear. What is all this? Jason gestured toward the screen. Are you bribing people? Is that how we can afford everything? Richard yanked the flash drive from the computer. You have no idea what you're looking at. This is business, Jason. Adult business that doesn't concern you. Doesn't concern me? Jason's voice cracked. Those are senators, Dad. That guy, he pointed to one of the photos. He was investigated for racketeering last year. Richard gripped Jason's arm tightly. Listen to me very carefully. What you saw stays in this room. Do you understand? People's lives depend on it. Our family's safety depends on it. The teenager pulled away, eyes wide with disbelief. Our safety? Or your reputation? Does Martha know? A muscle twitched in Richard's jaw. Your stepmother is not to hear a word about this. She knows I have powerful business connections. That's all she needs to know. So she's in the dark too, Jason said slowly. Perfect Martha with her perfect baby doesn't know she married a criminal. Watch your mouth, Richard snapped. The world isn't black and white, son. Sometimes maintaining our way of life requires flexibility with certain regulations. That's what we're calling it. Flexibility. Jason laughed humorlessly. No wonder you're never home anymore. The tension between them crackled like electricity. Finally, Richard's shoulders sagged slightly. I'm protecting this family. Everything I do, everything, is to secure your future, Jason. Someday you'll understand. I don't think I want to understand, Jason said quietly. And I don't think I want any part of it. As they drove home in silence, neither noticed the black sedan that followed them at a discreet distance, nor the man inside taking photographs of their departure from the office building. Back at the estate, Martha was finishing a private yoga session with Natasha, an elegant woman in her 40s with olive skin and a slight accent that hinted at Eastern European origins. Your form is improving, Natasha observed as Martha held a challenging pose. But your mind is elsewhere today. Martha released the pose with a sigh. Family drama. My stepson, there was an incident yesterday. Natasha rolled up her yoga mat with practiced precision. The teenage boy who resents his father's new family? A story as old as time. It's more than that, Martha said, lowering her voice despite the empty room. Sometimes I wonder if I really know my husband at all. He's been so distant lately, secretive about his work. Natasha's dark eyes studied Martha intently. Men like Richard Blackwell often carry burdens they refuse to share. In my experience, powerful men keep secrets that would shock those closest to them. That sounds like you speak from experience, Martha said, suddenly curious about her instructor's past. An enigmatic smile flickered across Natasha's face. Let's just say my previous career gave me unique insights into how power operates. Now, same time next week. Over the next 6 months, Martha found herself increasingly drawn to her sessions with Natasha. The yoga studio, a converted sunroom at the east end of the mansion, became her sanctuary. With its bamboo flooring, soft natural light filtering through sheer curtains, and the soothing aroma of sandalwood incense, it offered a stark contrast to the growing tension throughout the rest of the estate. Breathe into the discomfort, Natasha instructed one afternoon, her voice low and melodic as Martha held a challenging pose. In life, as in yoga, we must learn to find peace within tension. Martha released the pose with a sigh. If only it were that simple. Natasha's enigmatic smile returned. You're troubled again today. Your husband, among other things. Martha settled onto her mat, cross-legged. Richard barely comes home anymore. When he does, he's distracted, jumpy. And Jason, there's been some improvement since he started therapy, but he still looks at me like I'm the enemy. And what does your instinct tell you? Natasha asked, her gaze unervingly perceptive. Martha hesitated. That something isn't right. With any of this. She lowered her voice even though they were alone. Richard's business. I'm starting to wonder if it's entirely legitimate. Natasha's expression didn't change. And if it isn't? I don't know, Martha admitted. Before Emma, I would have walked away. But now you have more to protect, Natasha finished for her. She leaned closer. Martha, in my former life, I worked for the State Department. Diplomatic security. I've seen how powerful men operate, how they compartmentalize. The signs you're describing, they're familiar. Martha's eyes widened. You were what? A spy? Natasha laughed softly. Nothing so dramatic. But I learned to read people, situations. To trust my instincts. She paused. And to prepare for worst-case scenarios. What are you suggesting? Information is power, Martha. If you suspect your husband is involved in something questionable, don't confront him. Observe. Document. Protect yourself and your children. Martha felt a chill despite the warm room. My children? You mean Emma and Jason? Of course, Natasha said smoothly. They both depend on you now, whether Jason admits it or not. That evening, Martha sat alone in the kitchen, Emma asleep in the monitor beside her, when the doorbell rang. Duke's deep bark echoed through the foyer as Meredith answered the door. Mrs. Blackwell, the housekeeper called. Mr. Richard's cousin is here. Martha entered the foyer to find Eleanor Blackwell standing by the door, elegant, as always in a tailored pantsuit despite the late hour. At 62, Eleanor carried herself with the rigid posture of old money, her silver-streaked hair swept into an immaculate chignon. Eleanor, Martha said, surprised. Richard's not home. He's working late again. I know, Eleanor replied coolly. It's you I came to see. In the study, Martha poured 2 glasses of bourbon, Richard's expensive Kentucky small batch, and handed one to Eleanor. What's this about? Martha asked, settling into the leather armchair opposite her husband's cousin. Eleanor took a measured sip. I've been reviewing the family foundation's finances. There are inconsistencies. What kind of inconsistencies? Large transfers to offshore accounts. Projects that appear to exist only on paper. Eleanor's shrewd eyes fixed on Martha. Did you know that your husband has been diverting significant funds from the foundation into private holdings? Martha's grip tightened on her glass. I don't handle the foundation's finances. Perhaps you should start. Eleanor placed a flash drive on the coffee table between them. This contains copies of all transactions for the past 5 years. Richard may think I'm just a figurehead on the board, but I've been watching him. She leaned forward. Martha, I've always been suspicious of your sudden appearance in my cousin's life. But now I believe you may be just another pawn in whatever game he's playing. Why are you telling me this? Martha asked, her heart racing. Because the FBI has been asking questions, Eleanor said bluntly. And when this house of cards collapses, and it will, I want to ensure the foundation survives. It's the Blackwell legacy, not whatever scheme Richard is running. After Eleanor left, Martha sat in the dark study, the flash drive heavy in her palm. The meditation techniques Natasha had taught her became her lifeline as she struggled to calm her racing thoughts. The scent of sandalwood incense, which she had begun burning throughout the house, created a surreal contrast to the chaos closing in. One crisp October morning, Martha was surprised to receive an invitation to lunch at the Oak Ridge Country Club, the exclusive social enclave where Connecticut's elite gathered. The gilded card bore Eleanor's distinctive monogram, requesting Martha's company that Friday at noon. The dining room at Oak Ridge epitomized old money. Crystal chandeliers suspended from coffered ceilings, oil paintings of founding members lining dark-paneled walls, and hushed conversations conducted over fine china and sterling silver. Martha, in a modest navy dress that felt inadequate among the designer labels surrounding her, spotted Eleanor at a corner table with an unfamiliar woman. Martha, thank you for coming, Eleanor said, not rising as Martha approached. I'd like you to meet someone. The woman beside Eleanor turned, and Martha felt her breath catch. Though older, perhaps in her late 50s, she had Jason's unmistakable eyes, that particular shade of piercing blue unique to the Blackwell line. This is Evelyn, Eleanor continued, watching Martha carefully. Richard's sister. Martha sank into the offered chair, stunned. His sister? Richard told me you died of cancer years ago, she said directly to Evelyn. Evelyn gave a brittle laugh, her manicured fingers playing with the pearl necklace at her throat. Did he? How dramatic of my brother. No, Martha, as you can see, I'm very much alive. I don't understand, Martha said, accepting the glass of water a silent server poured. Why would Richard lie about something like that? Because my brother needed me out of the picture, Evelyn replied, her voice tight with suppressed anger. As co-executor of our father's estate, I had the unfortunate habit of questioning Richard's financial decisions. Shortly after I began investigating some troubling transfers, I suddenly developed a terminal illness, at least according to Richard's announcement to our social circle. Evelyn has been living in Europe for the past 5 years, Eleanor added. Quite healthy, despite the touching memorial service Richard arranged. I'm sorry this is. Martha shook her head, trying to process this new revelation. Jason should know his aunt is alive. He struggled so much with loss. Yes, my nephew. Evelyn's expression softened slightly. I've missed watching him grow up. Richard sent me photos occasionally, until I stopped playing along with his charade. She leaned forward. Martha, we've asked you here because things are accelerating. The FBI investigation into Blackwell Investments has expanded. They're looking at political connections, money laundering, possible ties to organized crime. Martha's stomach clenched. How do you know this? I still have friends in high places, Evelyn said simply. And unlike my brother, I've maintained relationships rather than transactions. Eleanor cleared her throat. Martha, we believe Richard may try to use you and the children as shields when this comes to a head. The innocent wife, the troubled son, the new baby, it's a sympathetic narrative. What exactly are you suggesting? Martha asked, her lawyer's mind suddenly alert to the danger in this conversation. We're suggesting you get ahead of this, Evelyn replied. Protect yourself. Protect Jason and your daughter. By doing what? Turning on my husband. By ensuring you don't go down with him, Eleanor said bluntly. Martha looked between the two women, these Blackwell women with their calculating eyes and generations of self-preservation instincts. "I need time to think," she finally said. "Time is the one luxury you don't have," Evelyn warned. She slid a business card across the table. "This is my attorney's number. Call him, day or night. He specializes in situations like yours." As Martha drove home from the lunch, her thoughts whirled. The scenic route along the Connecticut coastline, usually a calming drive with its glimpses of Long Island Sound between elegant homes, now felt ominous. Her phone rang through the car's speakers. "Natasha? Martha? I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Martha replied, grateful for the distraction. "What's up?" "There's something I need to discuss with you. Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow, before our regular session?" A chill ran down Martha's spine. "Is everything okay?" "Just be careful," Natasha said, her usually composed voice tense. "Watch what you say in the house." "And Martha?" "Don't trust Meredith." Before Martha could respond, the call ended abruptly. She gripped the steering wheel tighter, the autumn landscape blurring as tears threatened. The life she'd thought she was building, the family, the security, the future, was unraveling thread by thread. No one expected that Duke, the German shepherd who had saved Emma, would be diagnosed with terminal cancer. The discovery came during a routine veterinary checkup, when Dr. Winters felt an unusual mass while examining the dog's abdomen. "I'm afraid the ultrasound confirms what I suspected," Dr. Winters said gently, showing Martha and Jason the cloudy images on the screen. The veterinary clinic smelled of antiseptic and pet shampoo, the fluorescent lights harsh on their worried faces. "It's hemangiosarcoma, an aggressive cancer that affects the blood vessels. In Duke's case, it's already spread to his spleen and liver." Jason, who had insisted on coming along for what they thought would be a routine visit, paled visibly. "Can't you operate? Remove it or something?" Dr. Winters, a petite woman with kind eyes behind tortoiseshell glasses, placed a compassionate hand on Jason's shoulder. "We could try surgery, but given the spread, it would only buy him a few weeks, maybe a month. And the recovery would be painful." "How long does he have?" Martha asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Duke sat patiently between them, oblivious to the gravity of the conversation, occasionally nudging Jason's hand for pets. 3 months, maybe 4 with the right care, Dr. Winters replied. "The important thing now is to focus on his quality of life." Jason abruptly stood and walked out of the exam room, the door swinging shut behind him. Through the window, Martha could see him pacing in the parking lot, hands thrust deep in his pockets, shoulders hunched against an emotional storm rather than the crisp autumn air. "I'm sorry," Martha said to the vet. "Duke means everything to Jason." "I understand," Dr. Winters nodded. "Especially after what you told me about the incident with your daughter. That dog is a hero." On the drive home, Jason stared out the window, Duke's head resting on his lap in the back seat. "This is my fault," he finally said, breaking the heavy silence. Martha glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Jason, cancer isn't anyone's fault. If I hadn't taken Emma to the pond that day, if Duke hadn't had to stop me." His voice cracked. "I don't even remember what I was thinking. I was just so angry." Martha pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her stepson. "Listen to me. What happened that day was a moment of crisis for all of us. But look at what's come from it. You're getting help. You're talking about your feelings instead of acting on them. And you and Duke," she gestured to the loyal animal still resting his head on Jason's lap, "you've become inseparable." "He saved me from doing something terrible," Jason whispered, tears streaming down his face. "How am I supposed to just watch him die now?" Martha reached back and squeezed Jason's hand. "By making his last months the best of his life. By being there for him the way he was there for you." That evening, Richard returned home earlier than usual to find Martha and Jason sitting on the floor of the family room, Duke between them, surrounded by photo albums. "What's all this?" he asked, loosening his tie as he surveyed the scene. "Duke has cancer," Jason said without looking up, his fingers buried in the shepherd's thick fur. "We're making a memory book." Richard's face fell. "I'm sorry to hear that, son." He hesitated, then knelt beside them, examining a photo of a much younger Jason holding Duke as a puppy. "I remember when we brought him home. You were so excited you could barely sleep for a week." "You do?" Jason looked up, surprised by his father's rare moment of sentimentality. "Of course." Richard smiled faintly. Your mother thought I was crazy for getting such a large breed, but I wanted you to have a dog that would grow up with you, protect you. The mention of Jason's mother hung in the air for a moment. Martha watched the interplay of emotions on her husband's face, genuine affection warring with the weight of secrets he carried. I've been meaning to talk to you both, Richard said, settling onto the couch. I've had some challenging developments at work. The business climate is becoming increasingly hostile. There might be some changes coming. What kind of changes? Martha asked, suddenly alert. Richard waved dismissively. Nothing for you to worry about. Just some restructuring, possible downsizing. Jason shot his father a look. Is that why the FBI was asking questions at Blackwell Investments? Restructuring. Richard's face hardened. Who told you that? Tommy's dad works in your building. He saw them there last week. Martha felt her heart rate accelerate. Richard? Is this true? It's a routine audit, Richard said smoothly, though his eyes had taken on a hunted quality. Government bureaucracy, that's all. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to make some calls. As he retreated to his study, Martha and Jason exchanged a look, one that acknowledged for the first time that they were both aware something was deeply wrong. He's lying, Jason said quietly, once his father was out of earshot. Martha nodded slowly. I know. Jason's transformation became the heart of the family's story. His weekly sessions with Dr. Harris, a calm, bearded man who favored tweed jackets and kept a chess set in his office, began to uncover layers of abandonment and insecurity that had been festering for years. So your father missed your championship game, Dr. Harris said during one session, making a note on his legal pad. The office was intentionally comfortable, leather chairs worn to a perfect softness, bookshelves filled with psychology texts and small sculptures, and large windows overlooking a garden that changed with the seasons. Jason shrugged, feigning indifference. It was just baseball. Not like it matters. You pitched a shutout game, led your team to state finals, and your father wasn't there to see it. Dr. Harris persisted gently. I imagine that mattered quite a bit. He had a business thing, Jason mumbled, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. Always has a business thing. And your mother? Jason's jaw tightened. She left when I was 12. Decided family life wasn't for her, I guess. Dr. Harris leaned forward. Jason, we've discussed how your father told people she died. But you know that's not true, don't you? There was a long silence as Jason struggled with the weight of his family's lies. I saw her once, he finally admitted. About a year after she died. I was at the mall with friends, and she was just there. In a store. She saw me too, but she turned away. I never told Dad. Dr. Harris nodded thoughtfully. And then your father married Martha, and Emma was born. And everyone expected me to just be okay with it, Jason said bitterly. New mom, new sister, new perfect family. Except it's all fake. Everything about us is fake. Is that how you see Martha and Emma? As fake? Jason stared out the window, watching autumn leaves spiral down from a maple tree. No, he said reluctantly. Martha tries. She's not. She's not what I thought at first. And Emma? A ghost of a smile touched Jason's lips. She's just a baby. None of this is her fault. His expression darkened again. That day at the pond. I wasn't thinking straight. I just wanted Dad to notice, to care about something other than work. You were crying out for help, Dr. Harris said. And Duke answered. Yeah, Jason's voice cracked slightly. And now he's dying. Dr. Harris set down his notepad. Jason, grief isn't just about death. We grieve the loss of what should have been, the childhood you deserved, the honesty you were owed. These feelings are valid and important. Something shifted in Jason's expression. Martha gave me her old camera last week. Said I might like to document Duke's last months. He pulled out his phone, scrolling to show Dr. Harris a series of photographs. Duke sleeping in patches of sunlight, playing with Emma on a blanket in the garden, watching squirrels from the porch. These are remarkable, Dr. Harris said, genuinely impressed. You have a natural eye for composition. It helps, Jason admitted. When I'm behind the camera, I see things differently. Like I'm outside the situation, but also more connected to it somehow. Photography as both escape and engagement, Dr. Harris nodded. A healthy coping mechanism and a genuine talent. As autumn deepened, Jason's newfound passion for photography became his refuge. He carried Martha's old DSLR camera everywhere, capturing moments that others might overlook. Morning dew on spider webs, Duke's paw prints in the first frost, Emma's tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb. The images, initially therapeutic, evolved into something more. Martha noticed the change in her stepson. Where once he had avoided her and Emma, now he sought them out. Not for conversation necessarily, but to document their daily lives through his lens. One evening, she found him in the makeshift darkroom he'd set up in a spare bathroom, carefully developing black and white prints. "These are beautiful, Jason," she said, examining a particularly striking image of Duke silhouetted against the setting sun. "You really have a gift." Jason didn't look up from the chemical bath, where an image was slowly emerging. "I'm entering some in the arts festival next month. Dr. Harris thinks it would be good for me." Martha leaned against the doorframe. "I think that's a wonderful idea." "There's something else," Jason said hesitantly. "I've been thinking about what really happened with my mom." Martha froze. "What do you mean?" "I know she didn't die of cancer. I saw her a year after she supposedly died. And I found some documents in Dad's study. He paid her to stay away." The silence between them was heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, Martha sighed. "Your father has a lot to answer for, Jason. To both of us." "Are you going to leave too?" he asked, his voice smaller than she'd ever heard it. Martha crossed the room, and, for the first time, Jason didn't flinch when she placed a hand on his shoulder. "No," she said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere. And neither are you or Emma." At the local arts festival, hosted by the town's historical society in the sprawling community center, Jason's photography exhibit drew unexpected attention. Titled Shadows and Light, A Family's Journey, the black and white images captured moments of both tension and tenderness within the Blackwell household. The centerpiece, a triptych showing Duke watching over Emma, Martha reaching toward Jason across a dinner table, and Richard alone in his study with his head in his hands, generated particular buzz among the attendees. "Your work shows remarkable emotional maturity," commented the festival's head judge, a photography professor from a prestigious New York art school. "There's an authenticity here that's rare in photographers twice your age." Jason, uncomfortable with the praise but quietly proud, stood awkwardly in his button-down shirt and jeans. Martha watched from across the room, her heart swelling with unexpected pride. As visitors moved through the exhibit, she noticed 3 men in suits who seemed more interested in her than in the photographs. "Mrs. Blackwell." One of the men approached, flashing a badge discreetly. "Special Agent Donovan, FBI. Could we have a word?" Martha's throat tightened. "Here? Now? Perhaps somewhere more private," he suggested, nodding toward an empty meeting room off the main exhibition hall. Once the door closed behind them, Agent Donovan got straight to the point. "We've been investigating your husband's business dealings for some time now, Mrs. Blackwell. Specifically, his relationships with certain state officials and the redirection of funds from government contracts." "I don't handle my husband's business affairs," Martha said carefully. "No, but you were a corporate attorney before your marriage," Agent Donovan countered, "with a specialty in financial compliance. It's difficult to believe none of this raised red flags for you." Martha met his gaze steadily. "What exactly are you asking me, Agent Donovan?" "We believe your husband is about to move a significant amount of money offshore. When that happens, we'll have no choice but to move in. This will become very public, very quickly." He slid a business card across the table. "If you have information that could help our investigation, or if you want to protect yourself and your children, call me." Back in the exhibition hall, Jason was deep in conversation with a woman Martha didn't recognize, middle-aged, with auburn hair and familiar blue eyes. Martha froze, recognizing the resemblance immediately. "Mom." Jason's voice cracked as he said the word, part question, part accusation. The woman, Catherine Blackwell, Jason's biological mother, reached out tentatively to touch her son's face. "You've grown so much," she whispered. Martha approached slowly, unwilling to interrupt but determined to protect Jason if necessary. Catherine looked up, noticing her for the first time. "You must be Martha," she said, her voice surprisingly warm. "Your husband doesn't know I'm here." "Why are you here?" Jason demanded, his body tense. "After all this time?" Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "I saw the festival listing in the paper. Jason Blackwell, emerging photographer. I couldn't stay away." She glanced nervously around the room. "But I shouldn't be here. Richard was very clear about the terms." "The terms?" Jason pressed. "The divorce settlement. I was to have no contact with you. In exchange." She trailed off, ashamed. "In exchange for what?" Martha asked gently. Financial security. A new identity in another state. Catherine looked directly at Jason. I was weak. I took the easy way out because I couldn't face the mess I'd made of my life, of our family. I've regretted it every day since. Jason's hands trembled as he raised his camera, focusing it on his mother's face. Stay still, he whispered, capturing her image. The guilt, the longing, the lost years all reflected in her eyes. Later that night, as Martha put Emma to bed, Jason knocked softly on the nursery door. Can I talk to you? He asked, his voice thick with emotion. In the kitchen, over mugs of hot chocolate, he showed her the photograph he'd taken of Catherine. She wants to meet again. Properly this time. Martha studied his face. How do you feel about that? Confused. Angry. But also, he struggled to find the words. Like maybe there are pieces of me that only she can explain. He looked up at Martha. The FBI agents who talked to you. They're after Dad, aren't they? Martha nodded slowly. Yes. And it's serious, Jason. I know, he said simply. I've known for a while. Those documents I found. He hesitated. I made copies. Martha's eyes widened. You what? After what happened with Emma, after I saw how Dad was changing, I got worried. I thought maybe someday we'd need protection. From him. From whatever he's involved in. Jason pulled a flash drive from his pocket. Everything's here. The offshore accounts, the payoffs to officials, the shell companies. Everything. Martha stared at the small device, a strange calm settling over her. All these months of suspicion, of fear, of trying to hold together a family built on quicksand. And here was her teenage stepson, several steps ahead of her. Jason, she said carefully, what you're suggesting could send your father to prison. I know, he replied, his young face solemn beyond his years. But what about Emma? What about you? What about our future if this all comes crashing down and we're not prepared? Martha reached across the table and took his hand. When did you become so wise? A sad smile crossed his face. Probably around the time I realized how close I came to doing something unforgivable with Emma. Some lessons change you forever. The pressure peaked one crisp November morning when federal investigators, arriving in a convoy of unmarked black SUVs, pulled into the circular driveway of the Blackwell estate. Martha, alerted by Meredith's urgent knock, watched from the living room window as Richard was escorted from his home office, his normally commanding presence diminished by the gravity of the moment. Mrs. Blackwell, Agent Donovan acknowledged as he entered the foyer. I'm sorry it's come to this. Let me speak to my wife, Richard demanded. His voice strained as two agents flanked him. Agent Donovan hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. In here. He gestured to the study, positioning agents outside the door. Once alone, Richard's composed facade crumbled. They have everything, Martha. Offshore accounts, recorded conversations, emails. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. I never meant for this to touch you or the children. Martha studied her husband, this man she had once admired for his confidence and strength, now revealed as deeply flawed and frightened. It's not violent crimes, is it? Not drugs or anything like that. No. Richard shook his head vehemently. Financial crimes. Tax evasion, bribery of public officials, wire fraud. I've done questionable things, but I never hurt anyone. Except your family, Martha said quietly. You lied to Jason about his mother being dead. You hid your sister away with stories of terminal illness. You created a life for us built on corruption and deception. Richard's eyes filled with tears. I wanted to give you everything. To secure our future. To build something lasting. At what cost, Richard? Martha asked, a strange calm settling over her. Did you ever stop to consider what we really needed from you? Not money or status or power, just honesty, presence, love. A knock at the door signaled their time was up. Richard reached for her hand. I'll fix this somehow. I promise. Martha gently withdrew her fingers from his. Some things can't be fixed, Richard. They can only be rebuilt from scratch. As the agents led Richard away, Jason appeared at the top of the stairs, camera in hand. Instead of hiding or turning away, he raised the viewfinder to his eye, documenting his father's arrest, not with malice, but with an unflinching commitment to truth that had become his trademark. Later that evening, as the media vans that had gathered outside finally dispersed, Martha sat with Jason on the estate's warm veranda. The sound of cicadas blended with Emma's laughter as she played on a blanket at their feet. Duke lay nearby, his aging body still protectively positioned between the baby and the edge of the porch. "What happens now?" Jason asked, absently adjusting his camera settings as the golden evening light cast long shadows across the lawn. "Your father's attorneys think he'll cooperate with the investigation," Martha explained. "In exchange for partial immunity, he's providing information about a larger network of corruption involving other powerful families and officials. So he gets a deal while everyone else goes down?" Jason's voice held a note of bitterness. "Not exactly. He'll still face consequences, probably prison time, financial penalties. But he's made a choice to come clean, and that counts for something." From the kitchen, the comforting aroma of garlic and basil wafted through the open windows. Rosa, the family's Italian cook who had been with the Blackwells for decades, was preparing her traditional Sunday sauce despite the tumultuous day. "Your father called from his attorney's office," Martha said after a while. "He asked about you." Jason's hands stilled on his camera. "What did you tell him?" "That you're strong. That you're finding your voice through your art. That you're going to be okay, no matter what happens next." A small smile touched Jason's lips. "You really believe that?" "I do," Martha said firmly. "These past 6 months have shown me exactly who you are, Jason. Not just your father's son or your mother's child, but your own person. Someone with courage and integrity." As the sun dipped below the tree line, Jason raised his camera one more time, capturing Martha with Emma in her arms, the golden light illuminating them against the darkening landscape. The click of the shutter seemed to mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The diagnosis that had given Duke only months to live forced the family to make difficult decisions. Rather than putting him through painful treatments that would only briefly extend his life, they chose palliative care, medications for comfort, special food to tempt his diminishing appetite, and the freedom to spend his remaining time in his favorite spots around the estate. Each morning, Jason would wake early to take Duke for a gentle walk around the property. Each evening, Martha would find them beneath the ancient oak tree where Duke had taken to resting. Jason sometimes reading aloud from his school assignments, sometimes simply sitting in companionable silence with his hand buried in the shepherd's graying fur. In the wake of Richard's arrest, Dr. Harris suggested increasing their family therapy sessions. It was during one of these sessions that the most startling truth emerged. Catherine, Jason's biological mother, had never willingly abandoned her son. Richard, wielding his financial power and legal connections, had effectively forced her out with threats and manipulation. "I thought I was protecting you," Catherine explained tearfully during a monitored reunion. "He said if I fought for custody, he'd destroy me, that you'd end up with neither of us." As autumn gave way to winter, Martha found herself remarkably clear on her values and priorities. With guidance from ethical consultants and Natasha's expertise, revealed to include corporate restructuring experience from her diplomatic days, together they began the painstaking process of transforming Blackwell Investments into a legitimate enterprise focused on social responsibility. From corruption to contribution, Natasha mused during one strategy session. "It's not an easy path, but it's the right one." On a snow-dusted December morning, Duke passed peacefully under his favorite oak tree, Jason cradling the old dog's head in his lap as he took his final breaths. The photographs Jason had taken over those last precious months, Duke playing with Emma, watching over the family, enjoying the simple pleasures of sunlight and open spaces, became a profound testament to loyalty and unconditional love. At a small ceremony beneath the same oak, Jason planted a red maple sapling, a symbol of endurance and renewal. Emma, bundled against the winter chill in Martha's arms, reached toward her brother with chubby fingers, giggling as snowflakes danced around them. Jason, who once resented his half-sister's very existence, now protected her with the same fierce devotion Duke had shown them all. "He saved us both that day," Jason said quietly, patting the earth around the sapling's roots. "Not just Emma, but me too." Martha nodded, understanding the depth of his words. Sometimes the things that nearly break us become the foundation for something stronger. As they turned toward the house, where Rosa had hot chocolate and fresh bread waiting, Jason captured one last image, their footprints in the snow, large and small side by side, marking a path forward together. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and if you watched until here, comment, "I watched until here," and leave your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the end screen. It's very exciting.